Good to see everybody again. A good hot day out here this morning, and I told our guys today, counting today, we have 7 practices before we go kick it off with the Citadel here next week. So our guys are looking forward to that. This is our 3rd practice of Citadel prep, and really the defense getting ready for the triple option that the Citadel runs very well. It requires a disciplined defense and assignment, sound and assignment football, and those guys are doing a good job getting ready for that. Big challenge for them, and still a lot of competition in a lot of spots. Brian was asking for a depth chart over there. I said, come see you next week. We're still battling it out, which is good. That's what you want as a coach. Keeping the guys competing every day, every practice, every rep counts, and so it's good. We did have our first positive this week, and I went back and asked our training staff. It had been 40 days. We had a 40-day streak going, which is probably one of the best in the country. So I think we got to hopefully start a new streak of negatives. But we did have one positive that we found out about Monday, and so he is being held out. And then also just following the proper safety protocols, there's 4 additional players that are being held out right now in quarantine, just being close contacts. Roommates is an automatic close contact, and then depending on who you're around a lot on the field, could be other close contacts. So we have 1 positive and 4 additional young men that are in quarantine. And it's unfortunate. The guys are obviously disappointed because they want to be out here practicing and getting ready. But again, from the very beginning, we've said that our #1 goal is to keep our young men, players, staff, and everybody around safe and healthy, and that truly has been the #1 priority from the beginning. And then the #2 goal is to be able to play football. So in order to play football safely, you have to have and follow the protocols that are in place. And so we'll continue to do that. We tested twice this week, getting ready for next week, game week. We'll actually test 3 days a week. We'll test Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is kind of the plan going into the first game week, and that should continue as we go. So really the message to our players is #1, we have to continue to be vigilant off the field, and then also in our meetings and everything that we do, keeping the proper physical distance from each other, the mask on, those type of things. Everybody has to do their part. And then also the next message is to every member of the team that, hey, you have to be ready, right? I mean, literally, this is a year unlike any other where your freshman walk-on needs to know the game plan just as much as your starter does. And I don't say that as a extreme example. I say that very honestly. That's exactly what has to happen, because we have 3 more tests before we ever kick it off with the Citadel. And it's not just another positive, it's the positive, and then it's the close contacts around that would be out for that game. And so just to kind of give everybody an example, obviously Monday, if that were to happen, the positive or close contacts would be out for that game. If it happened Wednesday, they'd be out. And then it may be Friday. So let's paint this picture. And again, it's just about communicating with our guys, letting them know ahead of time, so there's not any huge disappointments on Friday. The plan right now is to test Friday morning before we get on the bus to head to the hotel. So you can have a scenario on Friday morning where you do have a positive, and again, his 3 roommates are also out, and maybe 1 or other 2 players are out, and then we're on the phone calling some of our walk-ons or freshmen that maybe weren't going to travel and telling them they have 30 minutes to get over here because they're now starting or they're now second team. Like, that's a very real deal. That's not an extreme example, and that's not just here. That's everywhere across the country. So, because of that, today was the first day that we started practicing different in the format. I think as a coach, it's very easy as a coach to get in a routine. I mean, a lot of our practices are the same things that we've been doing for a long time, but I think this year more than ever requires us as coaches, along with the players, to be flexible, to monitor, to adjust. And so today was the first day that we changed the way that we practice against each other. We went to more of an NFL format where, we didn't have scout teams. So typically before today, whenever it got to the team separate times, we'd have the offense on one field with the defensive scouts over there giving the look as if they were Citadel's defense. And then we would have the defensive coaching staff on another field with their first and second defense, and we'd have the offensive scouts, your walk-ons or freshmen that aren't playing, over there running the Citadel offense. Well, the reason that you can't do that now is those guys that are on the scout fields, they're not getting ready to play. And so, you know, you might not know that scout on defense, he may find out Friday that he's starting at safety and he hasn't been a part of practice and watching. So because of that, what we're doing is we're having a defensive emphasis and an offensive emphasis. So we'll go through our practice individual, we'll do our one-on-ones, we'll do our inside drill, but then when it gets time where normally we'd split up, we'd say, okay, this first 20 minutes, and this is what the NFL's been doing for a long time because they have smaller rosters, but the first 20 minutes, it's defense emphasis, so we'd have our second offense and some of our threes on offense, and our offensive coaches over there helping that offense run Citadel's offense versus our varsity defense. Do that for 20 minutes, and then we flip it. All right, we put our first offense out there, and we have the second and third defense out there, and they're running Citadel's defense for us. And it actually gives you a better look because you're going against even more, quality players on the other side. The big thing that you have to learn, and I was proud of the way our guys did, that's a lot of good on good, right? You get you get KJ Sales and Randall St. Felix going against each other a lot more reps than normal. So the biggest thing is just helping those guys understand if we're going to go good on good, we got to learn how to practice against each other. It's not banging every single time as if it was just the 10 minutes that we would normally do against each other. Now you're going against each other for up to an hour. So it's learning how NFL. If you go to watch an NFL practice, there's nobody on the ground at any point. Everybody is up. They're staying up because they can't afford to hurt somebody, right? They have, they've got 3.5 wideouts on the roster, right? I mean, so it's very short numbers. So that's the big message, and guys did a good job buying into that today. And in one way, I love it because it really gives every player on the team has a realistic opportunity to prepare as if he could play and be counted on. And so it's a unique situation, and but it's one that we've just again tried to over-communicate with our guys, and be sure that they're ready for what we have in front of us. We're hoping we don't have another positive, but we will. That's just kind of part of the process. And as long as we follow the correct protocols, then we can continue moving forward, accomplishing both of the goals. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Is there anything you can do, Jeff, to separate people in the same group? And by that I mean, like last week, LSU lost all their offensive linemen except for 4.
Yeah.
Can you do anything like, say, keep your quarterbacks separate so that they don't all go down?
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about. I think the hardest position is your offensive line and defensive line, because you can keep them spread out as much as you want, but when the play gets started, right, your tackle standing next to the guard, who's standing next to the center, who's standing next to the guard, and then your defense, you got that defensive end, that nose tackle, that other defensive end. Every other position, the guys are spread out. Thankfully, we're in shotgun most of the time, so we don't have to worry about the quarterback and center. We already have that built in. Running back usually is moving around and far enough away. Wideouts are spread out. DBs, linebackers are spread out. But the biggest concern is your offense and defensive line because of how close they are. So part of that, it's very difficult, and there's not a lot of ways to get around it. But what we can do is instead of huddling on the sideline like we would typically do, we send everybody out on the field. So kind of eliminate those huddles. And sometimes in a game you're going to have to time out, but it's going to be a huddle more like, spread out than everybody tight. And so I think that's part of it. It's coaching the guys up. When you're out, when you're not on the field, are you spread out? Like we have dots on the sideline, 3 rows of dots that are 6 feet apart, asking the guys when they're off the field, stand on a dot, to keep that space. And then we are very fortunate with the Yuengling Center to have close access. Without having that there right now and without an indoor, it would be very difficult to have meetings. But we have every team meeting at 7 o'clock every morning on the main floor there of Yuengling, and then defense uses that whole area to spread out. Offense uses this whole area to spread out. So we can take care of ourselves in the meetings. The biggest thing is in practice, when you're not on the field running a rep in a play, can we keep that proper spacing? Just during individual drills, where normally guys would be stacked right behind each other to get reps. Now you're just kind of leaving that 6 feet in front of you, and that's a little bit different, but that's kind of, everybody has to kind of take ownership in that. And I've said for a while that the teams that monitor and adjust what they're doing now for those protocols are going to have an opportunity to have more of their guys available as the season goes. And so that's kind of the mindset that we have right now.
So you're not worried
Are you double
about
training guys at more than one spot just to add depth? Have you gone that far?
Right now we're not. Now we would within a position like wide receiver, we may train a guy inside and out, or an offensive line, we may train a guy left tackle or right guard or center, and same thing secondary, corners and safeties. But we're not at a point, and I'm not saying that we won't get to a point, we may later. We're not at a point where we have to take a defensive player and work him on the offensive side. And I'm hoping we don't get to that point right now, but we definitely are doing it. And then another thing people don't think about is special teams. Think about that. You got a lot of guys all involved in special teams, and all of a sudden you find out the day before the game that 7 guys aren't going to be available. You may be using that third team, personal protector on the punt team. So he's got to be in those meetings, and that's why every special teams meeting we do is followed with a team meeting. Everybody stays there except the quarterbacks to be able to at least hear it, listen. I mean, there may be situations where you have to grab a guy on game day and coach him up, and that's just the way it is. And and people that can see that and open up to that early, are going to have a better chance moving forward.
You said you haven't had to take a guy on defense and work him on offense, or have guys work both ways. How much out loud has that been discussed, though, in terms of the hypothetical possibility?
It has not at all.
Okay.
It really hasn't, because we have enough depth within. I mean, right now what it is just talking about that third team freshman walk-on that could be in your 2 deep or could be your starter, and that's really the only conversation. Because really what you get to, let's just say, if you pick a position, any position, whether it's receiver, offensive line, or defensive line, you got about 15 guys in there. So yes, you may lose 2 or 3 from like one position, but you have other guys that play wide out or offensive line that can move over there first. So that's why it's not as drastic having to get over there. So it really hasn't been brought up at all yet, but maybe I can start thinking about it.
You're not worried about then going into a game with no quarterbacks, like say Friday before the game, all your quarterbacks are starting to go
You
out.
get a delay of game, first 3 plays, right out there on offense. Yeah, I mean, the next question gets into what constitutes not being able to play the game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that would probably get into that. If the team had all the quarterbacks that were out, then I'm sure there would be some discussions whether they could safely be able to go play a game. But again, quarterbacks, unless they're all rooming together, which I don't believe any of our quarterbacks are rooming off campus with each other, and we wouldn't put them together the night before the game, where normally you would, now you won't. You have to take some time, think about how you're placing guys on the plane, where you're placing guys in their hotel rooms, and those type of things. So really, as long as those guys in meetings are staying spread out, in practice, those guys probably are spread out as good as any other position. And so as long as they're not roommates, I can't say it can't happen. But the biggest thing is where you're meeting. And those guys are meeting in an area twice as big as this tent right here for 5 quarterbacks and
From a competitive standpoint, are you seeing any separation between the quarterbacks?
Yes.
Are you going to play all 3 of them against 6?
Yeah, one thing that I've learned, again, going through that in the past, I've been fortunate to be around some good quarterback competitions, and they're real good when you have some good options, and I've been around a lot of good ones that have good options, and I honestly feel that way right now, so I'm really not losing a lot of sleep over who may go out there first. But what I have learned in my experience of that is one thing, I've already said this, that they take care of themselves, right? If I were to leave and come back 3 weeks from now and they continue to practice, I could come back 3 weeks from now and I could see it. Like, it's going to develop and take care of itself. It always does. But the other thing that I've learned is you don't make any promises. You know, maybe the old school way to handle it is you tell the guy, hey, you're going to be the first guy in, and hey, third series, you're going in. Well, Newton's Law, what happens is you're down 14-0, and old boy's looking at you, he's buckling up, you're like, hold on a second, you know, I didn't really mean it. So now what you tell them is, you're first in, you're second in, if we get to another one, you'd be the third in. We'll let you know when that is, and then you kind of go as a game. Obviously, we would love with those three guys to have an opportunity for them to play, but the game and how each of those guys play and how the game happens, you know, will dictate that. You know, Citadel is a team they're going to try to hold the ball, you know, for a long time. If you go back 2 years ago and watch their game against Alabama, I believe it's 10-10 at halftime. And I was showing the guys some clips from that. One of the best lines was after Citadel scored their first touchdown. The commentator said, "That's the first points that this Alabama defense has given up in 11 quarters." You know, that kind of gets everybody's attention right there. You know, listening to Coach Saban talk at halftime, and part of that little video we showed the guys, we said, hey, this is a group over there, the type of offense they run. They want to shrink the game. You know, it's limited possessions. And so, you know, the game may or may not dictate where we are able to get multiple quarterbacks in. So that's why I won't make any promises to those guys or anybody else. And we'll just kind of see how the game goes and react from there.
Jeff, I'm sure you've got a number of concerns on defense. What's your biggest concern at this point?
The biggest concern really is biggest concern on defense in particular. Well, I could get into a lot of things I got concerns about right now. 95% of them have nothing to do with the football and the X's and O's piece. You know, I mean, probably the biggest concern is just the type of offense that we're facing in this first game. I mean, it's different. I mean, by you know, the normal way that we operate is, hey, it's about us, it's about what we do, and it is. But the option attack is different, and it's different for everybody. It's different for the coaches, different for the players, and you know, so that's for the very first time for this defense to go out there to go against a well-oiled machine. I mean, these guys are very confident. I think they've got 9 guys back on offense. The quarterback's an outstanding player. They got a great back, and they know what they're doing. It reminds me of some of the Georgia Tech teams. Whenever they have some experienced guys coming back and they can run it in their sleep. So if we're not ready, if we're not prepared, if we're not reading our keys, then you can get embarrassed really quickly. So that's probably the biggest concern, is just being sure our guys are prepared and ready to go. And then the other side of that is, hey, we chose Citadel. We had other options, all right, but I guess option, pun intended there. We had other options. For some reason, all the option teams were available week 1, but week 2. But part of the reason that whenever it got down to it, that we did choose Citadel, other than I have a lot of respect for them and their program, my experience at Clemson, we played them a couple years ago. They've always been a first-class program in college there. But one of the reasons is because we're going to play Navy later in the year. Navy always is a tough team in this conference, and with our goal at some point to be able to compete and win this conference, you're going to have to find a way to beat the option. And it's the same way at Clemson. We're struggling for a while. Georgia Tech was the locked-in cross rival in the other division, and you better go attack it. You can't run away from it. You better figure it out. And so I like that. I like having a challenge in a lot of respects in the first game. But you know, that's probably the biggest concern, is just being sure, because it's very unorthodox and just different maybe than what those guys are used to.
You mentioned a lot of good on good. Does that kind of help conditioning-wise, since you didn't have spring? And,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, just whenever you go against scouts, typically the good thing is when you're going against scouts is you're able to get a good look because they're running the offense or defense. The bad thing is it's not the same. You try to create the energy, but it's just not the same energy when you have good on good going against. So the energy and the physical nature of the good on good, the old, you know, saying iron sharpens iron, you know, you're getting a lot more of that. And just as a coach, that's a good thing, but you also, again, have to make sure we don't want to have any unnecessary injuries to go along with the challenges that you have playing with COVID, right? And so it's really everybody understanding not to take that cheap shot just because you got mad to play before the guy made a play over you. And so don't come back and get mad at him and take a cheap shot. You know, we got to figure out, and they did a good job for the first day of handling that, and I think they will move forward.
you need to be down to 2 quarterbacks by the time you play Cincinnati.
I would love to have one quarterback. I know I joke a lot about it, but yeah, the goal is to know who we feel the starting quarterback is for the team moving forward by Cincinnati. That's the big picture goal, and it kind of works with the timeline that I'm used to and that I've seen through the quarterback competitions in the past. But you know, it may happen in the first game, it may happen in the second game. That's fine. I just kind of let it happen and let everybody. Like I've said before, I want my wife and daughter to be able to come home and say, well, it looks like we found our quarterback. That's how evident it should look, and usually it does if you have really good players competing like we do. And then the other part is, again, we're playing during a COVID pandemic. There's a chance that all 3 of those guys are going to start multiple games. And so it's not a situation that, all right, we got our guy, appreciate y'all playing, here's the consolation prize, see you next year. I mean, it's like, all right, well, here's our guy right now. And it always can adjust. And again, everybody, I mean, we got to have our 2 freshmen or 2 talented quarterbacks as well. Jordan Smith and Contreras Marsh. I mean, they've done a really good job and are continuing to get better. And that's my message to those guys is, hey, don't get lulled to sleep thinking that these other 3 guys are going to be the guy. All of a sudden, all 3 of those guys pop positive the day before the game. You're the starter. You know, be ready to go. Know the game plan. Again, that goes back to what we're talking about the way that we practice. Those guys are able, if they're not physically getting all the reps, they're mentally able to see it and keep up with the game plan.
Jeff, I'm imagining these last 8+ months probably been some of the most challenging of your professional life. When y'all kick off against the Citadel, when that moment happens, how do you think you're going to do it?
Yeah, I really thought about just the pregame talk before the Citadel. I mean, I'm going to be emotional, just excited about, it's so different than a normal year and a normal season. And really, I'll be fighting back some emotions, not because of myself personally or my first game as a head coach. I mean, really, it's not been about that, and it's not going to be about that. Really, just for these guys. I mean, the looks that I saw on their face for 2 months in March and April, thinking that we don't know if we're going to be able to play. And then on top of that, all the stuff that our guys have been working through and dealing with the social justice stuff. I mean, there's just been a lot of things thrown at them. And to push through all of that, and finally get where we can go out and enjoy 3 hours playing in a great stadium, great venue versus a quality opponent. That's something that you just want for your players more than you want for yourself or your staff or anything like that. So there's no doubt. I mean, and like you said, yes, it's been challenging, but at the same time, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, there's been some days, some things aren't fun, some conversations aren't fun, and dealing with some of the stuff that we're dealing with. But in a way, being at Clemson for 12 years, especially the last 8 years, I mean, it's just like a well-oiled machine. You know what you're going to get. I mean, I've teased people, I could show up in flip-flops and have a lemonade at practice, and those guys were going to go do what they do. I really wasn't making a huge influence. But this is fun, just trying to figure out every day. It's like, you wake up like, all right, what's today's challenge going to be? And a lot of it is stuff outside of football. And then we're having conversations with players that we've never had in previous years with any other teams. And so, again, I'm a big believer in finding joy in everything that you do. Like that's really important to me. They're going to be tough days, yes. But I think I showed the team, Bozeman, the actor who passed away a few days ago. Right after that happened, that next morning, I usually like to start with a video of the day every morning at 7 a.m. try to wake them up. And I showed them a video of his speech. I believe he was at Howard, that he did where he graduated. He did the graduation speech there. It's about a 5-minute video, and his words were incredible. And the message that I had for our team, trying to give them some life lessons, is during his most challenging time in his life, he's literally fighting for his life, was his most successful and happiest years of his life. And in reality, that is life. And I think sometimes as young people and even adults, we have this false, idea that like I'm going to survive all this adversity and challenges, and then I'm going to get there and it's just going to be smooth sailing. But that's not life. I mean, it's adversity. You better find joy in the adversity. Don't hold your breath and think I'm just going to make it through it, then everything's going to be good. And so that's what I've told our guys. Hey, let's don't grin and bear it through this season. Does it stink? There are a lot of things that are hard and seem not fair or whatever? Yes. Man, let's enjoy it. It is what it is. We're going to look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and we're going to appreciate, the things that we learned going through this. And my deal is to be better for it. And then the last thing I'd say on that is one of our team commandments is maintain a positive attitude no matter what the circumstances. That's always been a team commandment from the day that I got here. Maintain a positive attitude no matter what the circumstances. If we have to come get you off the bus before we get ready to fly to Notre Dame, and your parents are already in the air, landed in South Bend, we have to get you off the bus and tell you to go back to your apartment, you're not playing for 2 weeks, maintain a positive attitude. I know it's hard, but that's what we got to do. And so that's kind of the mindset that these guys have, and that we're trying to instill in these guys. And we're going to be better whenever it's all over, going through it. There's no doubt it's going to be difficult. It's not easy, but we'll be better as individuals and as a team.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you all.